Good morning. Can we have the first slide? For those of you who wondered, yes, I have always laughed very loudly from small childhood. Some things just don't change. Good morning. Spring, 1975, in a suburb of Boston. Everyone living there is middle class and white, and the only real difference of importance is religion, Protestant or Catholic. Although some parents attended college, most children are expected to go, since college is clearly the ticket to success. As the oldest of three, I was expected to be an engineer, just like my father. He went to college on the GI Bill and knew that economic success depended on education. Best of all, he got a STEM degree. And then I fell in love for the first time, passion number one. Today, I'd like to talk to you about passion and the unexpected life you can live as a result. Passion number one. This first passion was a guy who was smart, sarcastic, a year younger, and loved history, 19th century American literature, and learning. I was smart, sarcastic, a graduating senior, and loved reading, plants, and sewing. We were both involved in theater. Why do we fall in love? Who knows? These emotions are often inexplainable, as some of you already know, and the rest of you will find out. That fall, I left for college, Hamilton, in fact, while he applied to colleges and finished his senior year. Away at college, in the fall and spring terms, I took the usual required classes for STEM, calculus and physics, and filled out the rest of my schedule with humanities. And then I discovered a new passion for another man. This one came from another time, place, and culture. Place, the Mediterranean. Time, almost 3,000 years ago. And his name, Homer. And suddenly I knew I had to learn ancient Greek. I'd never taken Latin in high school and only knew about the Greeks from all those mythology stories I'd read as a child. Jason, Perseus, Hercules, Medusa, etc. So for all intents and purposes, this new passion hit like a thunderbolt of Zeus out of the blue. When I went home that summer and told my parents about my new intellectual passion, they gave me a choice. Pick a major from the subjects on their list, all STEM plus business, or pay for my education by myself. I think you can all guess what I decided. And then life got really complicated. Over the next 7 years, I worked full-time at 3 different jobs in 3 different states and saved money to return to school full-time. I moved once per year on average and took night classes at 5 different colleges in 4 different states. Hamilton in New York, Ursinus in Pennsylvania, George Washington in DC, and BC and Harvard Extension in Massachusetts. And did I mention that I married my first passion at the beginning of this journey, at age 20, when he was 19? My parents didn't like that either. Talk about being stubborn and independent. And although he was in college, he supported me every way except financially. I was paying all the bills. After 10 years, I finally graduated with a BA from a 6th college, Wellesley, and I knew I wasn't done with my intellectual passion. So, off to graduate school at Michigan. 5 years later, I had a PhD in classics, covering the languages and history of 2 different cultures. But I still wasn't done. Now to start sharing my passion for classics with students at 3 more colleges and 1 high school. And after 25 years, I'm still sharing my passion for ancient Greek and classics, whether my students like it or not. Why did I work so hard to get a PhD in classics? Why do I feel such passion for a dead language and culture? How weird is that? The idea of passion is usually interpreted as pure emotion, irrationally and occasionally uncontrolled. Yep, good. Any rom-com bases its plot on this central idea. Throw in a few funny complications, create a silly crisis point, and then, magic, the couple lives happily ever after. We usually consider intellect to be the exact opposite of passion. It is rational, linear, and focused. But I would argue that passion and intellect together are deeply powerful. And when these are joined, they bring a level of understanding that surpasses pure logic. Does anybody know what that's from? Mr. Price's talk? It's a Fibonacci. Passion, based on knowledge, encourages that leap of understanding, that intuitive, I get it moment, that way to link two seemingly contradictory or unrelated ideas. Intellectual passion is the desire to know more, and then even more. More details, more depth, more breadth. And then, how do all those pieces fit together? The ancient Greeks had 3 different words that we translate as love or passion. The first word is eros, from which we get erotic, a deep and personal connection to one other person. The second is agape, a general feeling of devotion, usually for an idea, not a person. The panel members that were here several weeks ago are actually a really good example of this kind of love. The last category is philia, a passion about something specific, but not a person. Most of us have already found one philia, whether it be soccer, music, drama, math, or poetry. A lucky few have found more than one. I found my philia in ancient Greek. My first interest was based on the stories. Like the myths and fairy tales I read when I was young, Homer told great stories about heroic deeds, battles, and separated families. Then I realized the intellectual challenge. Ancient Greek is really hard to learn, and I love the challenge of stretching myself intellectually, particularly when I realized I'm actually really bad at languages. Greek has this cool alphabet, kind of like the English alphabet, but not really. I get to do most of my work alone, preferably in a library. No problem. I'm an introvert, and I liked being in libraries already. And most of Greek literature is lost. Classicists have to do lots of work to fill in the holes and figure out how the pieces fit together. Later, much later, I realized that the Greeks approached life in a very particular way. The language and the culture are both highly structured and very flexible. I don't know if you can all see where Greece is. You can all find Italy. Greece is immediately the one sticking down to the right of it. It's shorter and fatter. This is a Google map. You can't actually find this information online except in a Google map. Ancient Greek was a culture that existed between the north and west, Europe, the east, modern-day Turkey, Crimea, and India, and the south, Egypt and the continent of Africa. They traded commodities between civilizations, causing them to constantly compare and contrast cultures and ideas. As a result, they began to ask how and why the world worked, and they looked beyond their own gods for answers. The Greeks looked at the writing system in Phoenicia and wondered how to make it more efficient and easy to use. Thank them for the alphabet, slightly adapted now. The Greeks asked why events happened and created history, a word which means inquiry or knowledge acquired through investigation. The Greeks asked why about the world, about nature, and about people, which led to the disciplines of philosophy and later to science. STEM people, thank the Greeks both for your areas of study and for many of the terms that you use as you describe them. The Greeks asked why and why not about political systems and developed a new political structure, direct democracy. Americans, thank the Greeks for inspiring our system of government, regardless of your feelings about the current state of affairs. The Greeks asked why about products and money, and, over the long term, gave us the discipline of economics. They rarely got the answers to these questions right, but they began asking the questions we are still trying to answer. And as I learned more and more about the Greek language and culture, I developed my own questions. How did ancient Greek language and culture reflect the cultures to the east and south? How did the cultures to the west and north, Rome and Europe, use and adapt to these ideas? What ideas are still relevant to us, so far away in time and space? Passion is one of the core values at Brooks, and I would argue the springboard for many of the others. A true passion requires engagement, an engagement that you choose. True passion requires integrity. You can't cut corners if you're passionate. There are no shortcuts. The only person you hurt is yourself. As you learn and understand more, your confidence increases. You want to learn more, and you try to make guesses about how and why the pieces of your passion fit together. And as you become more confident, you begin to think creatively about your passion. How can you share your passion with others, particularly those who really don't understand why you care so much? And on a really good day, learn how to shape your understanding in ways that others can appreciate. Others who do not think like you. Others who wonder what the big deal is and why you care so much. Your desire to share your passion successfully requires empathy, the ability to explain your passion to those who think differently. True success is sharing your passion with others, particularly those who don't value the same things as you do. Your filet can be sports, or arts, or academics, or business, or the list is truly endless. Many of you have at least one filet in your life. Raise your hand if you're an athlete that's actually committed to your sport, varsity or not. Come on, you can do it. Raise your hand if you're a committed artist of any kind. Film, poetry, acting. Raise your hand if there's a field of academics that you really love. Ooh, that was enthusiastic. Please raise your hand if you care passionately about politics or religion or anything at all. Yeah. Go for the gold, people. Most of you have already found one filet, whether it be soccer, music, math, or poetry. I found mine in ancient Greek. I wandered through 9 colleges and 5 states, learning and sharing my filet. May you discover your filet, whether one or several. You will surely journey to places and meet people you can't possibly predict. And, if you are really lucky, you may gain a companion to share your journey through the years. Thank you.